Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. India, the context on this is important because it goes a lot. And one way to think of the India protests is it's 10% economics, 20% religion, and 70% politics. So the economics is that India gained independence in 1947, and it's one of the few countries that actually went full on into socialism for practices in the 1970s. It even went into the Constitution in 1976. They actually adopted socialist practices, state level planning, where the state determined all these things. Sweden was the other one that I know of that actually implemented full-on socialism. Both of them ended up abandoning it for various reasons. India began to struggle in the 1980s. They had some stagnation and general dislike of socialism, and they ended up abandoning it in the 1990s. But one sector that remained very state-controlled and heavily controlled was the farming sector, the agricultural sector. You've got minimum price supports. You've got regulations, not just between foreign countries in India, but literally between districts, like protectionist tariff and things to protect local farmers within India in the districts. It's continuing to have very small plots. So the traditional farm in the US right now is a megacorp. It is a giant farm, typically managed by a corporation or a business or a family that owns a business. It has adopted tons of technology and infrastructure because of the green revolution. It has the size to do that. It has economy of scale. In India, the plots continue to be very small, and it's enough to support a farmer and their family, but it's not a very efficient way of producing food. And some of these are doing pretty well. Some of them are within 90% of the global average, but some of these plots are a third or less of the productivity. So what it means is you have a lot of little small farmers producing just a little bit of food. They form into these cooperatives and unions, which is one way of they distribute it, but they also struggle with the distribution because of these interstate and interdistrict regulations. You can't sell your milk here because we only buy milk locally from. Imagine if the US, you couldn't buy Texas milk in Georgia, or even in Georgia, you couldn't buy South Georgia milk if you were in North Georgia. That's the kind of interstate regulations that's a holdover. The infrastructure of India, of course, it has very poor transportation in a lot of areas. They don't have a lot of technical infrastructure, refrigeration. They estimate a third, so they're producing less food, and then about a third of all that food goes to waste before it's marketed. And this is not, oh, the final thing is the government tends to play politics with farming. Like many countries, the farmer base has been one that's been played political football with. They tend to come out with rapid changes, and we're going to talk about that in a sec as we get into political. But no one disagrees that there's a problem with India farming. But what's happened is a couple years ago, 2 states deregulated their markets, basically broke down the inner district barriers within those states within India, and they weren't able to get very far because they're just 2 states within a massive area within India. This was used as a pretext for 3 laws passed by Parliament in September. One expands the scope of trade that farmers, it's basically creating a free trade zone within India so farmers' food can go wherever it's needed. These interstate barriers go away. It reduces the layers of there's a sort of a farmers empowerment and protection. Don't trust these words, to be honest, right? When they say farmer empowerment and protection, you'll see soon that the farmers may not agree with that, but that's what it's called. They have a dispute settlement mechanism. Very key to that is that you can no longer take these folks to court. It's kind of like being forced arbitration. And then essential commodities allows for the center to regulate certain food items. And it really cuts out this MSP, this minimum support price. The MSP has traditionally been used as indicative, which means it's like an index. Like we used chain CPI for certain laws. You take the chain CPI number, you use that index for certain supports, but it has also at times been used as an actual floor where they say you cannot sell your produce beneath this rate, and that has a market distorting effect. So these 3 laws there was no consultation done on this. This is where it gets political. There was no consultation done on these laws. There was no period for comment. There were no, when you liberalize a market like this, even if it's needed, there's going to be winners and losers. And what you want to do is balance the liberalization of the market with free market things, with protections and subsidies and support for those who are going to be hurt. Otherwise, you're not going to be the support. And this is where it changes from economics to political. And as I said, it's only 10% economics. The vast majority of it's political. So a quick political rundown on India. You've got two major parties that you're thinking about right now. One is the Indian National Congress. The other is the BJP, which is the, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Since independence in 1947, India has been dominated by the Indian National Congress. You think about Gandhi, right? Everyone knows about Gandhi and the role he played in gaining independence. Well, the socialization of India was a lot of the Gandhi's descendants. There was a legacy of prime ministers, sort of a dynastic cycle of prime ministers from that family over India. And Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, his granddaughter, was the prime minister for 1966 through 1977, then again through 1980 through her assassination in 1984. And this is when these socialization procedures were put in place. They were put in place. Again, the liberalization of the markets began in 1990s after collapse of the Soviet Union. There was a currency crisis. Again, the Indian National Congress is still largely in control. Vajpayee, Prime Minister Vajpayee, appoints a reformer, Manmohan Singh, and they begin liberalizing it 1999 through 2004. The BJP comes in again. And then what you have is you have this interesting analogy, which for US listeners, I'm going to kind of use an analogy that's not perfect, but it's kind of like Obama versus Trump. You have Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. He's Indian National Congress. Think of him like a Democrat. He's Sikh religion, and he is the prime minister from 2004 to 2014. Very much in the Obama meld. He's a technocrat. He's a very cold, detailed, noted for precision, stuff like that. Obviously, all politicians have controversial policies. I'm not trying to say they're immune for that, but that's the style of Prime Minister Singh. In 2014, as part of the populist wave that was spreading around the world, Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes power, 2014. This is much more like a Trump personality. He's an advocate of Hindutva, which is the uber nationalist, Hindu nationalist movement within India. This is a very chauvinistic movement. It puts Hinduism first and foremost. It's kind of like Make America Great Again. It's like make India as a Hindu nation great again, is Prime Minister Modi. And you can kind of see this farming issue sort of like immigration between President Obama and President Trump. Everyone agrees it's a problem. No one is like, hey, there's not a problem with agriculture, just like everyone's like, okay, it's one of these long-standing things. But you go from the technocratic fix of President Obama to the we're going to jam stuff through and build a wall and just do this with President Trump. And again, that gets a lot of support from the nationalist folks who are like, we're just going to do it. So the BJP puts forth these laws and just jams them through in September of 2020. They bypassed normal procedures, claiming the COVID-19. They put in no offsetting things. It was literally like a forced thing. And this led to it's kind of like, hey, we're going to build a wall. And regardless of what you say, we're going to build it. And we're not going to take any input. We're just going to do it. That's kind of what the style is of Prime Minister Modi. Now, I called mass instability for India in 2020, which happened a little bit, but the conditions are ripe for mass instability. And I was more worried about earlier Prime Minister Modi passed this Citizen Amendment Act that defined who could be a citizen if you were immigrating into the country and gave higher standing if you were of certain religions, but not Muslim. Again, 20% religion here. The Hindutva movement under Prime Minister Modi is extremely against certain religions, Sikh, Muslim religions, things like that. And you're seeing that play out here. So the farmers begin protesting this in September, right? They see this coming down. And again, no one's saying that this is wrong, but they're like, you didn't ask us. We don't have any offsetting support mechanisms. This is just going to be like a brutal free market program with no supports or transition periods or anything like that. And farmers traditionally play a large protest role in India. During the 1980s, when electricity prices were really high, they literally shut New Delhi down with protest until they got subsidies and support for electricity. And they have a history of protesting. Whenever you have major protest, you're going to begin to have a political alignment between the two powers. So as the farmers, it's a wide, diverse group, they begin protesting. You begin to see the Indian National Congress, which opposes the BJP, take the side of the farmers. the Prime Minister Modi and his party, the BJP, begins to use, they don't like argue the merits of the case, they just begin using more and more authoritarian measures. They do repression of free speech, they break up assemblies. So of course you get into this dictator's dilemma we've talked about, where the protests get more activist, innovative. They start using tractors to cause traffic jams. They have camp sit-ins. They actually they block certain cities with tractors to shut down the traffic. In retaliation, the authorities put in spike strips. They do arrest. There's some violence. They begin using sedition charges against journalists. They begin blocking social media. And then it all comes to a hit. Why this has taken off now and really becoming combustible is January 26th is the Republic Day in India. And that's the day under which, remember, they gained their independence in 1947, but their first constitution was in 1950. So think about the Republic Day is kind of like being our July 4th, right? For our Declaration of Independence, that's the key day. It's a key national holiday where they celebrate the framing of this Constitution, right? In 1950, January 26th. And there's a specific place called the Red Fort, which would be like the Liberty Bell from us. The Red Fort is where the first Prime Minister of India, Nehru, in 1947 at this Red Fort, it's a historical fort, it's been around for a few hundred years, he raised the national flag of India, and that was a symbolic mark of its independence. So 1947, they raised the flag over the Red Fort, and then in 1950, January 26th, they get their constitution. These are key patriotic days, and one of the things that Hindu Vatas are very keen on is patriotism, right? They're very much nationalistic. These are important days. So of course the farmers say, we're going to target your Republic Day. You know, that's your soft point, we're going right for it. So these protests happen on January 26th nationwide, and everyone knew this was going to happen. It didn't surprise anyone. But what did surprise people is that there was a contingent that broke into the Red Fort. This is like breaking into Liberty Hall, where the bell is. They climbed the dome and they hoisted what's called the Nishan Shahib flag, which I hope I'm getting that right. This is a Sikh religious flag, and it has a wide use by lots of people, but it's a distinctly religious flag, and it is distinctly not Hindu, and it's been raised over this would be like Antifa raising the black bloc flag over the Alamo, right? It would really not be taken well. And it's associated with what's called the Kalistan Movement. And the Kalistan Movement is literally a separatist Sikh movement. And so this was not the intention of the farmers, right? This was obviously a group within it taking advantage of the situations to promote separatism and tweak. And the authorities absolutely went nuts over this. They took it like I said, it'd be like putting a MAGA flag or a Trump flag over, the Democratic National Convention or something like that. It'd be like putting an Antifa or Black Bloc flag over the Alamo, maybe. You can pick whatever analogy you want. It's really a tweak in the nose. And what happened is some of the farmers' unions actually broke off from the protest at that point. They're like, that's not what we're about. We're not making this religious, because religious is a very combustible material in India. But since then, these protests are continue, and and you can read about it going on. They've actually started blocking Twitter users. This is when Rihanna and Greta Thunberg, and you get more of the Western attention as these protests really now metastasize into these much more combustible protests in India. So that's some of the context of what's going on in India. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.